This pattern is Stones of Athens, derived from Greece. We were able to travel to the Athens region and capture a variety of textures. In fact, this pattern includes over 15 interesting, unique textures, many of which were cast from natural, unhoned marble. It's a beautiful texture. You'll notice also one of the features on this tool is a very wide, fairly deep grout joint, and it also has texture just if it was inlaid marble. This tool is 4 foot by 2 foot in width, and this set includes 8 rigid tools, 2 flexible floppy tools for getting up against a wall or a column. It includes 3 touch-up 2 foot by 2 foot texture skins, and the reason that we increase the number of touch-up skins is the fact with so many different textures, we don't want to see a repeating texture when we're possibly texturing the perimeter of a slab. Also, it includes a 1 foot by 1 foot touch-up skin, again on a 45, so you can use this for stair risers or into tight areas. It also includes the touch-up wheel that not only matches the width of the grout joint, but it also has a texture on it, so when you roll out your squeeze lines, it has texture to it as well. Let's go take a look at how this pattern works. Stones of Athens has 8 unique full tools. Although there's a variety of ways that you can run this pattern, the best way to run it is in a herringbone fashion. We started off by laying a number 1, followed by a number 2, which now the number 3 tool will be run in a herringbone direction. This helps eliminate any repeating lines. On our panel for Stones of Athens, we've poured our concrete. Temperature's about 45 degrees Fahrenheit, so we went ahead and added 1% NCA, non-calcium accelerator. Now this panel, we poured it at probably a 4-inch slump, and the fact that it has such a dramatic slope, we always want to work from the low side and pull the concrete back up. So you'll notice that John is actually using the bowl float and pulling the concrete up, and so is Cody. He's floating the edges in an upward fashion to keep pulling the concrete up. The next step is we're going to apply our 60% of our first application of color hardener. On our Stones of Athens panel, I'm addressing the edges, and Dave has already rolled his bucket, or he's going to do it again. We're getting ready to apply our first application of color hardener. We're using CH320 Golden Sandstone. So what we're going to do is apply 60% of the material, let that set for just a minute, bull float that, and move on to the next step. Okay, on our Stones of Athens panel, we've applied our 60% of our first application of color hardener of our Golden Sandstone. Dave is bull floating it in. Remember, one indicator to see if it's wetting out is to just put your fingerprints for about 5 to 10 seconds, and you should see moisture bleeding up through the color hardener. So this is a good indicator that it's wetting out. On our Stones of Athens panel, we've applied our 60%. Dave and I have addressed all the edges, bull floated it in, and we're getting ready now to apply our remaining 40% of Golden Sandstone color hardener. So Dave's going to go ahead and start on that while I finish up these last few edges. On our Stones of Athens panel, Dave and I have applied the last 40% of our Golden Sandstone color hardener. I'm addressing the edges while Dave bull floats the majority of the color on, and then we're ready to go to our next step. We're moving on to one of our final steps for our Stones of Athens panels here. Dave's getting ready to broadcast CH515 sun-baked clay as an accent. So he's not going to streak it, he's just going to apply a real light layer over the entire surface, and then we'll go ahead and trowel that in, and we're ready to put our antique release on. Dave and I have our accent of sun-baked clay all troweled in. We're ready to move right on to the next step, which is to put on our nutmeg antique powder release. Dave's going to apply it with a splash brush. You'll notice over here, Ron has already preconditioned all of the stamps with a layer of powder release. So this pattern is Stones of Athens. It has 8 hard, rigid tools. So the way that this tool runs is in a herringbone, which we'll demonstrate in a moment. It is important to go around the perimeter with your matching texture skins. And what you're trying to do here is lightly texture out, roughly 6 inches, peel it back. Notice how the release color is lightened up, and always turn your texture at least 90 degrees. You don't want to see the same texture, so we're going to always turn the texture. We're going to go around the perimeter and we'll get busy with our Stones of Athens stamping. On our Stones of Athens, we've laid the 1, then in a herringbone pattern, we've laid the 2, 3, 4, then we went back, we started with our 5, and carrying on and so forth. Now, it's always a good idea to lift the tool. As we've talked about on the prior panels, we want to make sure the release powder is lightening up in color. And so I'm going to peel this up, I'm going to evaluate it, and I noticed that we have full texture on this panel, which means that I can keep going. If I didn't have enough texture or the powder release was remaining dark, I would put the tool back down and have Dave tap just a little bit harder. We're coming across our Stones of Athens panel really nice. Dave's doing a great job. We're getting uniform texture despite the extreme windy conditions. Everything's going great. Notice as soon as I lift the tool, Cody comes right behind me with the matching touch-up wheel, and if you can get it at the right time right off the stamps, there's really no reason you got to come back the following day and detail the joints out. On our Stones of Athens panel here, we just pulled off our last stamp. We evaluated everything, and I got to tell you, it really looks nice. Despite having Cody detail the joints as we move the stamps, it's not a bad idea to send somebody back around the edges to make sure that all of these joints terminate at the adjoining sections. From here, we're going to let it cure out the sufficient amount of time. In the summer, when the temperatures are warm, you might want to consider letting it cure for a couple of days before you remove your powder release. In the winter months, you might even want to go 3 to 5 days to allow the powder release. So we'll come back, clean the release off, and go to the next step. Okay? On our Stones of Athens panel, we've cleaned off the majority of the powder release. It looks beautiful. As a recap, we used golden sandstone color hardener. We accented it or antiqued it with sun-baked clay color hardener, and then we used a nutmeg release over the surface. Once again, this is a beautiful panel, Stones of Athens, to come back once the surface is dry where there's no standing water and randomly stain individual stones. It gives it a very authentic look. It really mimics the natural stone. However, if it's not your desire to put an acid stain over this, check with the manufacturer's specifications in terms of the sealer and let it dry the sufficient amount of time, and once that's cured enough, we could go ahead and apply our sealer. We hope you've enjoyed our chapter on Stones of Athens. With some additional practice and some good color selections, you can also produce some beautiful stamped concrete.